from PITSS, and Warren Elias, SVP Business Development and founder of Correlsense. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment and talk a little bit about the agenda. We're talking about 4 key topic areas. First, we'll begin with the risks of Oracle Forms modernization, all the things that are associated with that. Then we'll talk a little bit about how migrations can be made more successful. Then Warren Elias will talk a little bit about some strategies for managing performance in Oracle Forms environments. And finally, we'll end at the presentation with a Q&A. A little bit of housekeeping. We will try to keep the presentation to around 45 minutes as we promised. Do feel free during the presentation, if you have a question about anything, submit it into the chat window on your GoToWebinar screen. And finally, we'll make the slides available on the Correlsense site and as well as our SlideShare channel tomorrow. Now, without further ado, I'd like to hand over the presentation to Martin.
Thank you very much, Frank. Let me show my screen here and get into presentation mode. All right, I would like to start, first of all, highlighting the situation about Oracle Forms. Oracle Forms, just to make clear, is not going away. Oracle Forms is a platform that is still going strong, is coming up, new releases are coming up. But what you see here is the current support timetable, where you see that the most recent and the current only supported version that's available is the 11G platform. So 11G R2 is the most recent version of Oracle Forms technology, and that is still supported until 2017. So it's important for me to show this slide because by all the talk you hear on the market and concerns that Oracle Forms is going away, so it's very strong still going. A lot of companies, a lot of organizations have this. A lot of organizations are on 10G, and they are all facing a situation they need to upgrade, but also on earlier versions like on a client-server platform, which is probably the key topic of today, this presentation. When you're on an earlier version of Forms, when you upgrade, what are the risks and what are the challenges you're facing when you upgrade with regards to your application regarding performance. Now, there is a statement of, for those of you interested in the strategy of Oracle, what Oracle is promoting right now, there's a statement of direction out there. You see the link at the bottom of the slide, and you can simply Google it with Oracle Statement of Direction, Oracle Forms. But the key takeaways from that document are the following. First of all, as I highlighted, there are no plans currently to discontinue Forms, and the next releases are coming out. As a matter of fact, we believe, from what we understand from last Oracle Open World, in the first quarter next year, we expect the 12C version to be released. Regarding Oracle reports, it's a little bit different situation. The common assumption is that the upcoming 12C function version will be the last version of that Oracle reports. Obviously, nothing has been decided, but Oracle is recommending also in this statement of direction that if you have a large platform of Oracle reports, you should consider definitely to move towards a newer technology, and the strategy from Oracle currently is to go towards BI Publisher. So regarding Designer, nothing changed there. I presume that most of you know that Oracle Designer has been discontinued for a while already, or at least has been put on sustaining level of support, but there is no further functional development since the 10G version. So 10G is the last version, latest and greatest. There is also no plans to add a 12C version coming out. So that's just to give you in a nutshell what is the current landscape out there regarding Oracle Forms for your consideration. So obviously, if you have an Oracle Forms installed currently, the question you should ask yourself when it's running, you maybe think, oh, it's running fine, why should I change the running system? There is nothing to be concerned of. How much longer will it continue to run? It's not only that you look at the application software area on the very top where you look at the supported versions of Forms, you also should consider changes that are happening underneath regarding the operating software or, of course, the hardware. We have several customers approaching us that are very much concerned about dated hardware, old HP or Sun systems that are hard disks are failing, and that triggers typically then an upgrade. You would not believe how many upgrades we as a specialized company in upgrades we do still on Forms 3.0, where we see code that has been last changed in the late 80s and it's still running. So if you look at your whole environment, ask yourself how much longer will it run, where are all my changes, my potential factors that have an effect. So that's a risk that you need to take into account when you plan for a modernization approach. But when you do plan a modernization approach, it is a challenging project. And it's not only because of a new version of Oracle Forms to learn this new functionality, this new feature. It's more regarding the architecture that you are changing, especially when you're coming from a client-server architecture. You're moving into a three-tier architecture where you have multiple levels, layers of technology to be managed. And as a matter of fact, I've had a meeting this morning with a customer of ours, and they found out that sometimes their screens are pulling up very slow, or some forms are really not functioning as they should be from a performance perspective. And we found out, digging deeper, and it took quite a while to find this, that the configuration of only one of the three servers that were in place was wrong, wrong copied, or whatever happened. And so we found out that this was the root cause. So the operation aspect, I guess that's my key point, is also changing. It's not only that you develop new technology, also the operation aspects of running your Oracle Forms application is crucial, that you have the tools in place to manage your environment, your new environment. Now, looking at a migration scenario, if you have an older platform of forms, if you are before 11G, so what makes a successful migration? And back to that document I mentioned earlier from Oracle, where you discussed the strategy of where Oracle is recommending for you to go. They have a theme out there: protect, extend, and evolve. So the first, they start with to protect your existing investment in forms. You have developed over years business logic, and what the key idea is to protect that, all that investment you put in there. You got to go on a supported platform. The first step is move your old forms over to a supported platform, and once you are on a support platform, start to extend your forms, start to leverage the new technology that, for example, moving to a three-tier architecture with WebLogic, with application server, the benefits that brings this to your application. You can embrace, for example, single sign-on technology or other components that WebLogic enables you to do. And then, of course, the last point is to evolve. Especially the newest version of Oracle Forms, they have introduced a set of functionality that allows you to seamlessly integrate ADF applications, for example. ADF application development framework is the Java flavor from Oracle, the framework from Oracle. Of course, you can also go in a different other direction. The bottom line is that the functionality set that comes with the latest version of Forms allows you to integrate these new technologies. And the common sense of the strategy paper is basically, if you have a new requirements from your end users, or you want to rewrite existing Forms applications, why don't you do it in the newest technology and integrate it seamlessly in your applications? We just completed a project north of Detroit for a utility company there, where we added a very rich functional calendar application with drag and drop functionalities, and all the users they were used to know Forms, and they have no idea that you can do drag and drop and something like this. And they love it. This was one of the biggest steps or value add the application has encountered over the last 5-10 years, we've been told. So it's good to look into this new architecture, and especially with the latest version of forms, you can integrate them seamlessly. Now, when you do those things, when you go that path, there are a couple of performance issues you got to consider. And the first topic, the most performance situations we face at our customers is with regards to a change from the client-server architecture to the web architecture. And when you look at all the code that is being developed in your forms, there are several forms built in that could cause unexpected network traffic. When you look at synchronize or timers, for example, in a client-server environment, you have utilized the CPU power of your client to do these tasks. In a web environment, you're sending network traffic back and forth over the network, and this can cause, if you use timers frequently or a synchronize command, this could cause a significant amount of network traffic and slows down not only your application but also applications within that are running on the same network. So it's very crucial to, while doing this upgrade and migrations, to look and to monitor your application to identify those potential bottlenecks. The second topic that could come with a performance issue is that if you change the runtime, if you go from a 6i environment, for example, to 11g, the runtime changes from a C environment to a Java runtime. And we identified that in some cases, the Java processes for certain operations, especially when you look at, for example, a block command, when you a block with many records, it's slower than it used to be in 6i. There is code properties that can be adjusted to overcome these things, but it's definitely that, especially when you handle a lot of records in areas, the runtime could be slower from compared to what you used to have in your 11g environment. In your client-server environment. So there are all solutions out there, but the key message here is that you got to identify those. And I'm not saying when you see here a couple of challenges or issues that they will apply to any application out there, but they could. The problem is always, do you have the code embedded that has this kind of challenge or not? So that's the key, is to identify this. And I'll address this topic in a little bit in a live demo of our tool set that I want to propose here. So regarding the browser performance, the second point here, of course, because you're not client-server, you don't use the local CPU. If you have large images or tabbed canvases where you switch with a lot of items on there, that takes a while to transfer over the network as well. So that's an architectural or a topic, how you set up or how your user interface is created. So that's something to be addressed as well. And the two last points here is regarding, that's a side effect of the database. There has been some updates. If you're coming from a really early version of your database to the latest 11g, there have been some changes with indexes and so on. So in the most recent versions, I would say it's a little bit more picky. You've got to have more indexes in place for foreign keys than you used to have, and the application could significantly slow down, or more important, the last topic we identified with that there are patches out there that is very highly recommended to resolve issues with database locking or alert. Some forms suddenly freeze out there, and it's always these kind of issues are a common issue in all users. So it only happens in a certain scenario, and having a tool set on your side to do these things, to identify those elements, is crucial to find this very fast. Especially, can you give a small anecdote about the DB locking? Very large clothing, men's clothing provider here in the US have more than 7,000 users, has just upgraded with us from 6i to 11g, and they're facing this situation that suddenly a few screens just froze, and all we had to do is to install that patch, and then it was gone. But it took us at least 3 or 4 weeks to find exactly what was the root cause and why this happened. So these things happen. So that's always a potential risk that you need to encounter in your upgrade project. So regarding the alternative that you're having, if you're looking at a modernization approach, I'd like to highlight about 4 different approaches. Let's start on the very bottom. If you want to stay in forms technology, if you just go from a previous version to the latest version, this could be a very, very fast project because upgrading from 6i to 11g is more or less an automated upgrade based on a tool set that we offer. In general, no matter how many forms modules you have, we would be done in 3 to 4 days with any upgrade ready for testing for you. And then after that, the dotted line signals the maintenance effort that you have after that. So if you want to have the low-cost approach or the fastest approach, that's definitely stay with Oracle Forms, go with Oracle Forms technology. That's the way to go. On the very top here, obviously, if you want to redesign your complete application, throw away whatever you have, so don't do the project that we mentioned earlier, then of course it takes a long time to finish this project, but obviously at the end you have a very good architecture in place, software architecture in place to run through. And there are 2 other alternatives in the middle. So and again, those are not only designed for scenarios when you migrate from forms away, for example, to Java, to ADF, Apex, or somewhere else. There are tools out there that claim to have a one-to-one migration tool, and they do a fabulous job with the user interface that all works well. The challenge is when you look behind the scenes in the business logic, when you look at all the trigger code that has been developed, if you convert all the trigger logic simply from PL SQL to Java, what you end up is a very high maintenance afterwards in Java, because the software architecture that you're running is basically a 20-year-old form software architecture merged into a Java technology of the 21st century. So the bottom line is that you only have on the front end a modern application, but in the back end you still have this old legacy code running. So, and that's the difference to our approach. What we have in our tool set, we help to prepare the code before you do the migration. And I agree, this will take a little bit longer, that's fine, but afterwards your maintenance effort will be therefore much lower, and you are, because you prepare the software architecture of your new application to the sweet spots of the target architecture, and that's crucial for a successful migration. What's also crucial for a successful migration is that, as I mentioned earlier, the integration capabilities of Oracle Forms 11g, they allow you to over at once. You can take some core functionality of your forms and move it to a new, migrate it to Java, whatever, and have everything else still in forms, and you can interact, you can call from forms Java and vice versa with no problem. The beauty of this is you can migrate at your own pace and based on the skills you have and the other project priorities. There is no need, by using a tool set like ours, there is no need for you to hire consultants over several months that are on a target, but you can basically do it yourself by utilizing your internal resources that you may or may not have already in place. The other thing I already highlighted earlier, it's a migration. If you do a migration, always look for that you're not re-implementing a 20-year-old forms runtime if you do this. And this is an excerpt from an article that Grant Ronald, the product manager those days for the development tools, wrote in the Untitled Journal. So it's crucial that if you attempt to rewrite or redesign, re-engineer your code, adapt the new technology, embrace the new software architecture. With that said, before I give you a quick peek in our presentation, this is the modernization process that we are proposing at PITSS. What we have with the preparation, I highlighted what we understand under preparation. We would do an analysis of your forms code. We remove dead code. You would not believe how much dead code sometimes we find in our customers' code, the code that has been simply copied from one version to the other and never really removed. And by removing this dead code, you save already a tremendous amount of time moving over to a new technology. Redundancy optimization, and then afterwards what we do is we help you to extract business logic from the forms modules into the database. And then we migrate to whatever platform you are looking for. And just to give you an idea, these are reports that we can generate for you. It's a complexity analysis report, a data flow analysis. We show you exactly which forms is calling what other forms, what library is attached to what form, and so on. The beauty of this is a chart like this can help you identifying those functional clusters that can be migrated first, that are maybe less complex. You want to maybe not start with the most complex forms. You want to start with a low complex area. So you can find those very easily by looking at this map, at this functional flowchart map in your application. And this is a real-life example of one of our customers in the UK. It was a designer application. They had about 1.2 million lines of code in that application, and we were able, by our unused object analysis, we were able to remove all the code down to only a little bit above 600,000 lines of code. And imagine it's 45% less lines of code. This means 45% less time you need in converting. You don't need to convert or migrate all that code. So this is a huge time saving and also a success factor for your project. I mentioned a couple times, PITSS is a software company. We have a tool that we license. The tool's name is called PITSS. We consider it as a lifecycle management for forms. We do not only migrations upgrade, we have source control, multi-language capabilities, maintenance development, analysis, and it would take too long to go into each of those elements. But what I'd like to do now to show you just a glimpse on how the tool looks like, about 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll pass it back to Oren to conclude with. What you see here is that this is the tool set. The tool has these various tabs here on the left side where you have the functional areas that you just saw. And important to know is that our tool is based on a repository approach, meaning at the very beginning what we would do is we would load all forms modules, reports module into a repository. And this is basically a view into the repository. You can browse through all these forms like you used to do it, or like you're doing it in Forms Builder. You can go on a trigger, you can open the trigger and you find certain kind of code in there, and you can also edit in there. So if you would, our tool can be considered also as an extension to your existing Forms Builder or Reports Builder. By having everything in a repository, and by the way, also the database objects are there, allows you to do a variety of very, very complex analysis and changes. So a very powerful tool is to find, if you have, for example, a synchronize command or, let's say, alert command, you can type in a certain kind of built-in from Oracle and search it across all your code, everything, all your forms modules, libraries, reports, and then you find a list where this all occurs. You can double-click on it and you see exactly where this command shows up. So if you identify that you have a performance issue, if you identify that maybe the synchronize command is using this, you can search for synchronize or alert in this case, and you then know exactly where you need to make changes in your code. A huge time saver. If you would not have a tool like this, you would have to open every single forms module manually. Another really great functionality with that regard is our analysis functionality. Again, to show you where are all the dependencies in your forms. Let's say you have a slow running view and you want to see where is this view all used currently, which is the effect. First of all, in a drill down, you see all the tables, where the tables are based, but that's easy. Any tool can do this. If you drill up, that's something that's unique to our tool. With drill up, you see exactly where in your application is this view used. You see exactly the line what trigger and what line some access to this view happens. So again, if you have a performance issue and you know it's somehow related to that view, you see exactly where is that used in your application. Where could that show up? The last part I'd like to present is our application engineering area. Just to give you an idea, I mentioned earlier about unused object analysis. We can very easily go on a certain kind of code, a forms module, and display with you all these objects are not used, and we identify this because we have this repository approach and know all the dependencies. I show you that flow chart earlier, and what you see here is nothing else than vice versa. We know exactly which code is nowhere used, and this is the list we generate for you. Obviously, it's still up to the developer. There might be very good reasons to keep the code in there, but if you like, we can also automate the removal of that code and find that. So that typically happens if you've been a forms developer like myself. When I had to create a new set of forms functionality, I copied an existing forms, copied it over, and I created a lot of redundant code because I didn't clean up the new one what I don't need. So, and that's a very typical scenario in a lot of forms environments, and our tool is extremely helpful to resolve this. The last part is if you have let's say in this case, there's an application and you have code behind the button. There's a button like a calculate commission button here, and that button is opening a trigger called when button press trigger. And what our tool can do is we can analyze what's all behind that when button press trigger. There are several procedures called in that trigger. And what we can do is we can, by click of a button, move all that code into a database object. In this case, I create a package for this. And by doing this, the idea is to move as much business logic from the forms into the database to avoid having recreate PL/SQL in Java. So we want to keep PL/SQL, move it into a database, and by that approach, we achieve that you can still use the code as before. The only difference is that the code is in the database and allows you can also reuse it. Then we can put web services on top of this if you'd like to reuse it somewhere, maybe on a mobile device or somewhere else. But this is a good example. This has been created just now by PITSS. I created a whole package with a button press trigger, and all the globals and the items are passed through as arguments into that procedure, so they can run the same way as they did in the trigger. So again, a huge benefit of having a tool like PITSS on the side to help to re-engineer and re-architect your forms application to make a successful migration. At this point, I'd like to switch back to the presentation and conclude it with, if you are considering going forward with a tool like PITSS, the benefit we bring to the table is we reduce tremendously a project duration, we free up project budget, and because it's automated, we typically tend to have a higher quality compared to any manual approach. And if you're going from an earlier version 6i up to 11g, I think it's a no-brainer. We can upgrade you in 3 or 4 days at most, and then you're ready to go and test your application. If you're interested to contact us, the contact details will be displayed on the last slide when we do the questions later. But you can, we offer a free proof of concept if you're interested. We would come on site and convert your application for free, and then you can test it yourself in your environment and then make a decision with confidence that it works. If you have a 10G environment, we'll be happy to quote you a fixed price offer to upgrade also in a couple of days. And if you're looking to go to Java, we're looking forward to talk to you for a pilot project if you need to convince management or want to have a proof of concept of the architectural environment, if that's the right thing to you. We'll be happy to help you out in those decisions. At this point, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I'd like to pass it on now to Oren.
Hi everyone. and thanks for joining. Thanks for the great overview. Have to say that, you know, listening to you and looking through this brings back a lot of memories. I actually remember working on migration from Oracle Forms version 2.3 to version 3.0 using migration tools, and definitely brings back a lot of memories. I'd like to talk about what happens after the migration is complete. And you know, migrations are a project that takes a long time. Some of it can be done automatic. Some of it is done manually. Whatever you do manually, you then go through a very, very thorough process of testing. And in many cases, you also have data migration. So these projects can range anything from a few months up to a year or more. And the question is, what happens the day after you put it in production? So people tend to be very nostalgic about their applications, and things tend to get very subjective. You change a few buttons, the UI looks a bit different, and all of a sudden they have a gut feeling that the old one used to work a lot better. So that was it was better with the old system phenomenon. And there's what I call a 2-week tolerance window, where people would be willing to accept glitches, people would be willing to accept some slowdowns. Probably somewhere between the 2 to 3 weeks, the main business users will start screaming, bring us the old system back. We like the old system. The fact that Oracle doesn't support it doesn't really interest them. They're not IT people. And the worst thing that can happen is starting to roll back a system to the old system in terms of migration. So, you know, just trying to calculate back the huge cost of a failure of a rollout is enormous. You take into consideration the lost time, you take into consideration the migration of the data, the labor costs, and the potential of churn of some of your best coders and some of your best sysadmins, and the fact that they now need to go through this all over again, typically a 3 to 6 months window. And this is one thing that we saw in an insurance company that went through a similar case, again, starting after about 2 weeks of performance issues in production. So why is Oracle Forms so difficult to manage in production, and what can we do about it? As Martin mentioned, the move from a client-server architecture into a multi-tier architecture enabled the new Oracle Forms to be much more robust. On the other hand, it meant that you have a lot more people now involved in the management of these applications. So typically, you'll see one person on one end screaming it's slow, but then is it the network? Network people have their own tool. They can prove that it's fine. You'll have people managing the web servers. Again, separate tools, separate log files. DBAs managing the database, and sysadmins managing the forms component, not to talk about the development, either in-house or third-party. So this is a classic case where, on one hand, you can find people saying it's all red, it's slow, and you may have 5 or 6 different tools showing that everything's fine. The solution is to being able to track every individual request so that instead of saying, well, it's slow, but we don't know what's causing it, you can actually start speaking the same language. And that language is saying, it's slow because it's taking 10 seconds to open a window, and let's try to understand exactly where these 10 seconds were spent. Now, if we have that as a data set, then the processes of managing the performance in production can be much more effective. So we can immediately detect when the service levels are degrading. We can do this for every single window, for every single action. So being able to then come back and say, it's not the entire application that's crashing, it's really just window X that's opening very slowly, creates a good basis for starting to talk about the similar data set between the development team, the production team, and the users. The next step is being able to isolate very quickly what is the bottleneck area. Here's an example of an application which is tied in further into additional components like mainframe and shared services. So the ability to take the performance and look at the good transactions versus the bad transactions, putting them one next to the other, gives us a very quick way of isolating the problem area. So again, we moved from a client-server architecture into a multi-tiered architecture. We want to know, is this the desktop, is this the network, is this the web server, is this the forms runtime, or is this the database very, very quickly, so we can have one person looking into it instead of 10 or 20 different people trying to isolate the issue. So the first important thing is being able to quickly isolate it into the problem area. So in this case, the application team quickly identifies that it's in the code, it identifies which screen, when does it happen, provides a fix, and then the next step is to do before and after analysis to make sure that the problem really is resolved. So this is what we mean by a closed loop approach to proactively managing the application after it's been released. Here's an example of a specific request, and again, this illustrates how we move from different sources of information and how we can move away from a customer calling up and saying it crashed, and then a number of 20, 30 different log files trying to piece them together into very, very specific information. This is an example of one specific request, one specific window that was opened for one specific user, show exactly how long it took from the user experience. In this case, it took 2 seconds to render it within the browser, within the applet. How long it spent in Apache, how long did it spend in OC4J, how long it spent in the forms runtime, and tracking every specific SQL down to the database so we can attribute that directly to the request. So just knowing that our database has some issues isn't really helpful. What we need to know is who is the user, what was the window, what was he doing exactly, and which one of these are put back into context. So again, our concept has been tracking the transactions in order to understand that. So why is Oracle Forms so difficult to manage? First of all, it's multi-tiered. Second of all, it's not just Java and .NET. 99% of the application performance market today is focused on Java and .NET. Oracle still has custom code running within the Forms runtime, which makes it very, very difficult. There's hardly any solutions out there which can actually manage successfully Oracle Forms, including Oracle itself. So Oracle itself has very limited coverage in terms of Oracle Forms support for performance management. We have come up with a solution which is very unique in the marketplace of being able to offer a very sophisticated application management solution for Oracle Forms. So the support that we offer is complete, including the Forms runtime coverage, and doesn't require any application code changes when running in production. So just to kind of recap, I think the migration project is a very large undertaking, and once that's done, the most critical success factor of the entire project becomes the performance of these first 3 to 4 weeks. So that's the first case where the users are starting to experience what the entire migration project was really all about. And if that performance isn't perfect, the project itself can completely fail, and the business users may request to bring back the old system. So the way to proactively manage that is to be able to have very good visibility into production, being able to baseline before and after, and being able to react very quickly to any anomaly which may happen during these first 3 to 4 weeks. So I'd like to hand it over back to Frank, and we'd be happy to take any questions that were accumulated during this time.
Great. Well, thanks, Oren. And again, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, if you do have questions, please feel free to type them into the chat window in the GoToWebinar screen. Good news is that we stayed pretty much on time, although you can hang around if you do want to ask a few questions. If you have specific questions, feel free to contact some of the team here at CorrelSense at info@correlsense.com. There is a demo also. And again, we'll be posting the slides on our site tomorrow. Or you can contact the contact info for PITSS in the USA, Jason Mara's email on this, or you can visit the PITSS website as well. Looks like I don't see any questions at the moment, so why don't I pause for 5 seconds and see. Okay. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions. So again, on behalf of everyone here at CorrelSense and the team at PITSS, we thank you for joining us today and have a wonderful day.